There we go. There we go. So, hi everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, because we've just been introducing ourselves a little bit, and people from all over the world, from Australia and the UK, and I think I have someone entering now from Ireland, Australia. Did I say that? Norway, the US. So this is really wonderful. I'm so glad so many people have showed up. So first of all, I want to thank Pamela Kulman. She is the admin of the histamine intolerance group. It's a Facebook group with over 40,000 people. And she is amazing. Just want to give her a big shout out because she admins this group, and she does, I think she's a nutritionist. She does consultations for people in the group, and she's very, very generous with her time. And she's been very supportive of me and the work that I do. And so I just want to thank her. This is the second webinar she's asked me to do for the group. So it's an honor to take care of this. So I know some of the faces are familiar. Some of you I don't know. So I'm going to do a little introduction and tell you a little bit of my story and how I came to be doing this work, because I'm not a doctor. That's the first thing I want to say. It's like I am not a medically trained professional. My background is as a trauma counselor, and I've been coaching people for about 30 something years. And so just letting people into the Zoom room. Sorry if I keep looking over here because people are coming in. Excuse me. And so I'm just going to tell you very briefly a little bit about my story to explain how I ended up doing this work. So I grew up in the UK, and I experienced some horrible violence in my early 20s. I was mugged 3 times. You know, it's bad enough being attacked 1 time, but I was mugged 3 times. I had some serious injuries. And what happened was I kind of the physical injuries recovered, got well pretty quickly, but I started to have chronic pain. I had chronic back pain for probably about 25 years. And it would flare up and it would go away and it would flare up. About every 6 weeks, I'd get this chronic pain in my back. My neck and my shoulders were always sore. My muscles were always tight. And before that, I also had IBS, chronic, stomach issues. And as a child, I'd had terrible cystitis. As a small kid, I was taken to the hospital for tests. They could never find out what was wrong. I also had chronic allergies during school. I remember when I was in high school, my school bag was like a pharmacy. I would go for injections in the winter. I had inhalers and pills, and and by the time I got to college, I'd had a surgery on my sinuses, which was the most excruciating pain, and it didn't do any good, right? And then later on, I was trying, salt water things and homeopathy, and what I found is with all these physical conditions I had, all the things I tried would work for a while. The homeopathy would work for a while, and then the squirting salt water up my nose would work for a while, and then eating lots of roughage would help my stomach for a while. I did a lot of yoga and Pilates and stuff like that, and that would help my back for a little bit, and then it would flare up again. So the weird thing is, I never thought of myself as a sick person. I actually felt quite normal. I just had these things to deal with, and they would each flare up and go away and kind of take turns which one was kind of angry on each particular day or week. And I just thought that's the way I was. I didn't know that these things could go away. I just thought they were the challenges that I'd been sent, and that's what I had to deal with. So after I kind of recovered from the trauma that I went through, I had PTSD probably for about 10 years. And back in the early 80s, especially in Manchester, north of England, nobody was talking about therapy or treatment for such things. Basically my treatment was have a cup of tea, go home and walk it off. That's kind of really the treatment I got. So I kind of struggled through that on my own. And luckily I found some women who really helped me. And so the PTSD symptoms kind of went away, but all these physical issues kept going. And they kept, like I said, they kept coming and going, and I'm battling them and challenging them. And at the same time, I had actually trained as a coach. When I was in college, I trained as a counselor, we used to call it back then. I trained with the Manchester Rape Crisis Center because, you know, I'd been through trauma. And so this was something that I, you know, had a personal, you know, interest in. And so I trained to answer the hotline, to go give talks to community centers, to talk to doctors and lawyers, policemen, you know, social workers, people who would come into contact with women who'd been attacked. And so I kind of had this career going as a coach and a counselor. So I actually ended up in Southern California. I had a career in the movie business. So doing movies, I ended up in California. And in Southern California, there was every kind of self-help thing you could want. You know, we're doing retreats, you know, and we're doing, every guru would come to visit for lectures. And I was constantly, you know, sorry, I'm just going to, if everybody could mute for now, that would be great. So I was constantly trying to improve myself personally, you know, personal transformation, self-help work, all that kind of stuff. And I think that helped with my PTSD symptoms, but the physical stuff just kept going and coming. And I see now, looking back, I kind of had a story that I was carrying around with myself, that my body was weak, that it was letting me down, that it was a battle to keep, you know, dealing with all these challenges. And I was actually paralyzed several times. My back would go out. I used to call it, I used to be bent sideways. I was like, I used to describe myself as being like Audrey Hepburn on one side and Marilyn Monroe on the other side. You know, I would be bent that much out of shape. And I actually ended up in the emergency room several times, paralyzed, unable to move my body from my chest down. So I thought this was just how, this was life. This is how it's going to be for me. And sooner or later, I'd be in a wheelchair, you know, having surgery and paralyzed. And then about 8 years ago, I came across a new paradigm in psychology, and I'm happy to talk more about that. You know, please ask questions, you know, later on when we open it up. But what happened was I got very excited about these ideas, and I decided to go to London to do some training. That's where I met Al, who's here on the call. We were on the course together, and we, you know, we learned about how the mind works. We learned about how experience is created. And to me, this was fascinating because up until that point, I kind of seen that a lot of my problems were going on in here. I knew the problem was in my thinking. My moods were terrible. They'd go up and down. I struggled with a lot with relationships, and I get very judgmental about everybody and everything. So I knew I had a problem with my thinking. I just thought I had to do something about my thinking. Right? So I had all these tools and techniques. I'm sure you guys have tried it too, the meditation, the mindfulness, the tapping, you know, expressive writing. I did all these things, and they would help for a while as well. And then as I was learning this new paradigm, I started to see I didn't actually have to do anything about my thinking. I started to see that thought is always moving. It's spiritual. This is where I always start moving my hands around, because these are spiritual principles, and thought is always moving through our minds. It just keeps, it's just the way we are, thinking. They say we have something like 90,000 thoughts a day, constantly moving through our minds. And this course I did was lasted about 6 months. And at the end of the 6 months, I suddenly noticed that my back wasn't hurting anymore. And I noticed I hadn't had a big pain flare up in about, and I went going like, since I started this course. In fact, since, you know, a few months before I started, when I first started learning about these ideas. And then I realized that my IBS had kind of gone away. And then I realized that my skin was better. I'd had psoriasis and eczema, you know, during school. And my allergies took a little bit longer to go away, but they've also been gone for a few years now. It's been about 8 years. And so I got fascinated by this because, like I said, I tried all these things to get rid of all these pains and allergies and allergic reactions, and nothing had happened before. And it was kind of ironic that when I stopped trying to fix these things, it actually got better. So this is really what I want to share with you, is like, how did that happen?
Wow.
So looking back, I can see now that what was happening was my body was screaming at me to slow down. That's probably the simplest way I can say it. I know now that I spent most of my life up in my head, in my thinking. In fact, it wasn't until a few years ago I realized just how anxious I was. I never thought I was an anxious person because I was a coach. I'm a counselor. Other people are anxious. My clients are anxious. They come to me with their problems. It's not me. But I remember when I started reading pain research, and I was reading a really great book on pain management. And the author gave an example of a situation. He said, imagine you're being invited to a social event, let's say a drinks party at someone's house, and you're supposed to, he said it was called for 8 p.m. Okay. So I don't know about you guys, but I'm a little bit of a perfectionist, and I discovered this more recently. So if I'm going to a new neighborhood, someone's house I don't know, I'm going to arrive a little bit early so I can make sure I find somewhere to park. And so I do this, and now there's plenty of parking, so now I'm early. So now you have to wait in your car, so you're playing on your phone and you're looking at the clock, which 10 minutes, let's say, goes really slowly when you're sitting in your car waiting. And it gets to 8 o'clock, oh great, I can go in now. And then it's like, you can't walk into a party right on 8 o'clock, right? That's really lame. Who does that? So you think, okay, now I have to wait a little bit longer. So now I'm going to wait. How long do you wait? Do you wait, 5 minutes, 10 minutes? Because you don't want to be flaky late, but you want to be kind of cool late. What is cool late? I don't know. And then you see someone walking in. Oh, thank God I can go in now. That's anxiety. I didn't know that. I thought that's the right way to do it. You arrive early, you find your parking space, you walk in at the right time, wearing the right clothes, the right shoes. And I suddenly started seeing that the majority of my thinking is all about doing it right. And so this started fitting in with what I was learning about pain and allergies and stress, because I'm sure you've all heard of the fight or flight response, right? So when I was training as a trauma counselor, I remember one of the very first classes I did, they told us that the stress response is designed to last for about 20 minutes, maybe 30 minutes. Heard a few different opinions about that, but say between 20 and 30 minutes. Because let's say, God forbid, you've been in a car accident, or your house is on fire, or a tiger is chasing you, right? In about 20 to 30 minutes, you should be able to find the fire exit, call the emergency number, get out of the car, climb a tree and escape from the tiger, and then you're safe. And then it takes about 72 hours for all those stress chemicals, adrenaline, cortisol, glucose, to like fade out of your body. And then in 72 hours, you're ready for another emergency. So as I was learning this, I thought, hold on a minute. My clients aren't sitting in stress for 20 minutes. They're sitting in stress for 2 hours, 5 hours, 6 hours, 18 hours a day. When I've explained this to some people, they've said, I've been feeling like that since I was 10 years old. So our bodies were not designed to sustain that level of stress for that long periods of time. And that's why we get sick. Because if you imagine, your adrenal glands are going to be absolutely fatigued, sending out all that adrenaline. Your heart is having to pump around all those chemicals around the body. Your lungs are working really fast to make oxygen for your muscles, because your brain thinks you're in danger. So this is what I learned. Our brain does not speak English or Spanish or French or Chinese or any other language. Your brain is stuck in the skull. It's a little box, right? And all it has to rely on is your 5 senses. Sight, smell, touch, hearing. I always forget one of them. Even balance. There are more than 5 senses. Balance is also a sense. And these senses are helping the brain to keep us safe. So the brain doesn't speak English or French. It speaks safety and danger. So if I'm sitting in my car and I'm worrying about what time to walk into the party, or am I wearing the right clothes, or am I going to do that presentation at work tomorrow, or why does my boss want to see me? Or, the kind of things that we stress about and can maybe get anxious about and overthink. The brain is going to hear that as danger. And if my brain thinks I'm in danger, it's going to start putting all those stress chemicals into me so that I can fight or run away, fight or flight. And most of us aren't running. So we're sitting there, and the adrenaline and the cortisol and the glucose are just sitting in our bodies and making us sick. And it doesn't have to be the kind of, crisis drama anxiety all the time. I don't know that I was ever really like that. But I think for me, there was like a river of anxiety kind of flowing through the background somewhere. It'd go up and down a little bit, but it was kind of always there. I was very self-conscious socially. I was afraid of what you think of me at work, even though I was working in Hollywood and I was having, amazing fun in these jobs, but I was terrified I was going to do it wrong. I was going to mess up, that you didn't like me. That's a constant pressure. So what I learned about the fight or flight response is that it's a very wise system. Excuse me. So when we get into a stress response, the brain wants to keep us alive. And so it starts to get very efficient about its resources. So what it does is it shuts down systems in our bodies that aren't essential for living. For example, fertility. If you're running for your life, then making babies is a luxury, right? And it shuts down the digestion system too, which is probably relevant to a lot of us on this call. Is that if you're running for your life, then digesting lunch is also a luxury. And forgive me for being graphic for a moment, but this is why people pee or poo themselves when they're stressed. If someone, you see in movies, like if someone's being tortured and they usually, wet themselves. It's not just like because they're scared. It's because the body thinks if you have to run for it, it doesn't want all that liquid sloshing around inside your bladder or inside your gut. So it expels that stuff so you can get away and survive. So when the brain thinks we're in danger, it shuts down the whole digestive system. But the problem is we get hungry, right? So the digestive system is kind of on strike. It's shut down. The factory has, shut the doors. And then you put some food in. That's a problem, because now you're putting food into a system that's not working well or at all. The intestines aren't doing its peristalsis thing. The enzymes aren't being produced. The stomach lining is weak because it's gotten used to, not working properly. And we're going to get bloating. We're going to get painful gas. We're going to get, stomach pains, constipation, diarrhea, lots of yucky, horrible things start happening when the digestive system isn't working properly. I have a client right now, and he's got terrible reflux pain in his chest. And the doctors keep telling him there's nothing wrong, but it makes sense to me, because if he's putting food into the stomach and it can't go through the system properly, then all that stomach acid is going to start going upwards. And that's the burning sensation he's feeling in his chest right now. So that's what's going on with the digestive system and with fertility. And in the brain kind of shuts down. And by the way, I don't want to scare anybody, because these things are temporary. They can be reversed. But in the brain, it shuts down things like forward planning. Because if you're running for your life, you don't need to be thinking about your, holiday in the south of France next year, right? And it also shuts down creativity. Because if you're running for your life, you don't need to be thinking how you're going to redecorate your living room. Which is why I remember when I was in the depths of my PTSD, I could not think past next Thursday. I couldn't think about, my brother is a bank manager, and he was always on to me to get a retirement plan. I'm like, are you kidding me? I don't know what's going to happen next week. What are you talking about, retirement? Or, I would think of people say, like, just do an art project. And you're like, oh, and it's not that I was lazy. My brain just was like so focused on survival and all the things I thought I had to do to get through the day. I couldn't do these other things. So if you've ever tried to help someone who's, in a depression or anxiety, that's why they they can't, it's not that they're lazy, it's just the brain's kind of shutting down on all those other systems. So what I started to see was, as I started to relax, because I'm now understanding my thinking, and my stress level was going down, my body didn't need to scream at me anymore. I think all the pain, the allergies, the eczema, the asthma, all that stuff was really my body trying to get my attention, to get me out of my head and get me present in my life. And as I started to do that through understanding, then my body didn't need to put all those alarms off all the time. So as that happened, I started to get better. And I think, and I don't know why my, hay fever and rhinitis type allergies took longer. They've gone away now pretty much. I still have a bit of, I think this is just the way my sinuses are messed up. So I still can feel it in my voice, but nothing like I used to. I used to be allergic to olives and cedar, and my eyes would burn, and my skin is itching, flaky skin around my eyes. It was, I'd want to rip my head off and stick it in a bucket of water. And I haven't had that feeling for quite a few years now. It's amazing. So that's kind of what I wanted to share in terms of the technical information. So I love questions. So I'm going to pause now and just see if anybody, if you want to put your hand up, you want to, your little yellow hand or your real hand. If somebody has questions, some people sent in some questions, so I do have some here as well. But if anybody wants to ask me something, I would love that. Let's see, anybody? I stunned you all into silence. Let's see who's going to go for it. Anyone?
I have a question.
Oh, I think I heard two people.
Sorry.
That's okay.
You go first. Whoever can go first. It's okay.
Okay, thank you. So I hear what you're saying, and it makes complete sense. I was wondering, specifically, are there, what tools did you use to have your mind calm down? Because it's definitely, I try to tell myself, I shouldn't worry about this and I need to calm down, but is there specific guidance on how to do that? I guess is my question.
Yeah. Oh, that is a brilliant question. Thank you. Yeah. So, I was saying how I was coaching people, for 20-something, 30 years. And I had a lot of tools and techniques that I would use, the expressive writing, meditation, Pilates, I was doing all these things to try and help myself just relax. And what I found was that they would work temporarily. I kind of call them the pink paint treatment now. If you imagine you got an old wooden chair from the junk shop and the thrift store, and you paint it pink, and it looks pretty for a while, but then the rot underneath starts to come through. The woodworm is still there, and it starts to crumble, and the paint peels off, and either you've got to get another chair or pour more paint on it. So I was constantly going from one tool and technique to the next guru, to the next self-help book, the latest thing. And what I see now is that it was actually when I stopped doing all those tools and techniques. So what I'm pointing at, and I'm what's called a 3 principles practitioner. So I'd love to share more with you about what this is, because I remember I said I came across a new paradigm in psychology. And this paradigm really is about seeing that everybody has innate well-being. Everybody has innate health. And so when I get caught up in my thinking, which is what stress really is, that's what anxiety is, it's kind of taken me away from the moment. So when I saw that thinking is always moving, it's constantly moving from my mind, and anxiety is kind of speeded up thinking. You can feel like your shoulders go up, it gets, it ges faster and faster, right? So I like to use analogies and metaphors. So I see thoughts and thinking now like could be like clouds, could be like traffic, on a freeway. So let's say that thoughts are like trains going in and out of Grand Central Station. So let's say this thought has just left the station. if I now employ a technique like reframing or tapping or mindfulness, and by the way, there's nothing wrong with any of those things. If they work for you, fantastic. You know, we don't want anybody to be suffering. But now, if that thought has left and I'm now going to start to try and work on it, it's like I've dragged the train back into the station to work out how to make it leave, right? Well, it already left. So when I started to see that my thinking is always moving, I started to see that there's actually nothing to do. Now, I have a very busy life. I write books and I travel and I do lots of amazing things. So it's not that I'm not doing anything. I do plenty. In fact, I do more now than I ever used to. But I don't have to do anything about my thinking, because like our bodies have incredible wisdom to heal themselves. You know, like if you have a cut, a fracture, an infection, the body works really well to heal itself. And when I was writing my second book, which is about chronic pain, I had this insight, and I saw that if my body is designed with an incredible healing system, wouldn't my mind be also, right? So just 1 second, because I'm going to get a prop. I didn't think of this. So this is my favorite prop. It's a snow globe. Can you see that? So what I saw was all my busy thinking, and even the tools or techniques were like stirring up my thinking all the time, right? Now, you know, then I'm going to do some expressive writing. Now I've got to do some meditation. Now I've got to go to yoga. You know, it was on and on and on, as well as all the worrying about, you know, jobs and relationships. But what do I do to make the glitter stop? Nothing. Right? Like I said, it was when I stopped doing all those techniques and methods. So really the answer to your question is insight. When I had an insight into how my mind works, it got easier, it got calmer. I realized that there was actually nothing wrong with me. There was nothing to fix. And my thoughts were going to move on anyway, like clouds. They're going to move on anyway. And when I started to see that I didn't actually have to do anything, I think that's when my brain got the message that I was safe. Because if you're spending a lot of time doing tools and techniques to fix something, it's like you're saying there is a problem. And I started to see there wasn't a problem. And I wasn't broken. I didn't need fixing. And so my mind calmed down. My thinking just started moving through without me analyzing it all the time. And my body was able to calm down and didn't need to scream at me anymore. So I've just scratched the surface there, but I hope that kind of makes you a little intrigued or curious to we can always talk some more about it. So yeah, thank you for that. So there was somebody else had a question.
That was me.
Yeah.
It was kind of the same question that she just asked. I was diagnosed with gastritis like a year ago, and since then I've gone downhill so bad, like all kinds of mystery symptoms, and I'm down to like only 4 foods that I tolerate. It's pretty bad. So yeah, that was what I really had to ask, was how do I implement something like immediately to start getting my mindset out of where it's at, and to be able to, I mean, I can't even eat white rice, which sounds so silly because no one should be intolerant to white rice.
Yeah, no, I'm sorry. My heart goes out to you. I've worked with quite a few clients who have been in such, you know, they're the way I see it now is, like, you're right, that there can't be anything wrong with white rice. You know, I've had people say to me, but I'm allergic to water. You know, they're in such a state, like even water, and I'm like, but aren't we made of water? Right? So it can't be the food. And I've had several clients now who were like you, were down to, like, you know, just 4 or 5 foods that they could tolerate. And it's not, I've started to see it's not about the food, it's about state of mind. Because if my state of mind is in such anxiety and is in such a state of reactivity, then that's why the brain is thinking we're in danger. And so it's taking its kind of limited resources to help you survive and just get through the day, which in itself is exhausting, right? And stressful. And then it becomes like a vicious cycle to the point where, you know, you can't hardly eat anything. And that's in itself is stressful. So you can see the levels of stress are just getting worse and worse. So I have a little diagram here. So this is my latest favorite diagram. If you could see that. This up and down is moods. And right now, I'm guessing you're kind of down here, right? Like I was down there with my PTSD. And down here, we have a very limited view of the world, right? It seems like I can only eat these foods, and you spend all your time going to doctor's appointments, and you know, and just makes life really, really miserable. And in that place, we're kind of believing our stinky thinking. You know, I believed that my back was fragile. I believed that I was going to be in a wheelchair sooner or later. And those stories are very heavy too. They're very stressful to carry around. So, but if you look at the picture, the little guy up here on top, like his mood is up. He can see really far, right? He has a great view. Like if you go on top of a building or up a mountain, you can see far, you can see possibilities, you can see that it's not always going to be like this. And the only difference between these two people is their thinking. And it's going to sound maybe trivial when you're in a lot of pain, but I would say your body is screaming at you to stop and slow down. What if I told you there's actually nothing wrong with you, and that you are okay, you are not broken? My teacher is a psychiatrist, a medical doctor, and he's retired now, and he says this all the time: we're never broken, we're not lacking anything, and you don't need fixing. And I was like, what a relief. And then my mood just went up a little bit, right? So if you can just see that, even just a little bit, go up a little bit, you can go up a little bit more. There's possibility, there's light at the end of the tunnel, there is hope. I've worked with lots of people who've gotten well for the most, really debilitating physical issues, fibromyalgia, chronic fatigues, all those things. All my stuff has gone away. Because they started to see that they were feeling their stressful thinking. And when you start to see that thought, whatever stressful thought you had, it's already gone, it's already moved on, that you can actually come back to some peaceful thoughts and peaceful moments. And if you keep looking for that good feeling, I promise you, you will find your way out. You might need more help, and please contact me if you want to help me. I can help you, point you more in this direction. But it really is a question of seeing fresh new thinking and looking for that hopeful good feeling. So like I say, we're just scratching the surface here, but there's so much more on offer here. So my hope tonight is, or today, wherever you are, is to just getting you curious that there is a possibility of hope and getting well. So hope that was helpful. Is it Crystal? I can't see where you are.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, okay, we'll be in touch.
Thank you.
I see, Patty, you have your hand up. Yay.
I do. And I wanted to share, it's kind of an observation and experience. I was diagnosed with celiac back in 2008. And since then, I've had 4 severe reactions. Right. And I don't recall exactly when I remember it happening, but I don't remember exactly timeline when it happened. But the last 2 have been in the last 3 weeks. And what's really fascinating about that is I watched myself almost talk myself into it. So I went to our local restaurant and I ordered something, and I asked if they used separate toasters, and they did. And I'm sitting and I'm waiting, and this thought popped into my head: oh, make sure they open a new jar, make sure they use a new utensil. And I'm thinking to myself, no, I'm not going to do that. But then I came back to the office and I got on the line and online, and I'm looking at, well, where do they get their bread? And I'm seeing that their bread comes from a place that's local, but they also make regular bread. So then I start thinking about that. And I'm like, no, I can't let myself go here. I can't do this. But I didn't let it go. It was still playing in the background. And 2 hours later, I'm in my office surrounded by therapists while I'm vomiting, And then it happened again. Just recently, I'd bought some soup from somewhere and it was thick. And I was like, it says it's gluten-free, it should be okay. But I went into my head and I started thinking, well, what if it's not gluten-free? And within a few hours, I'm vomiting it again. And then I was thinking about it this morning, and I realized the second time I ever had a reaction was 6 months after my son died. On his birthday, I had gone out hiking. I had stopped at a restaurant. I had gotten lunch, and an hour and a half later, I was throwing it up. And so the thing is, I don't really know that I've had gluten exposures, but I can say that I know that my head was not in a good space all 3 of those times.
Right.
So I'm not ready to go out and start eating, wheat pasta. But it's really curious to me to say that I literally watched myself talk myself into being sick.
Yeah.
And it's like I was helpless to stop it. Even though I knew what I was doing, it still ran its course. And do you know what I mean? It was fascinating to me to say, oh my God, I'm talking myself right into this. And here it is.
Yeah. Yeah, you've made me you reminded me about, when my allergies started. My hay fever, breathing, skin kind of hay fevery type allergies started when I was probably 4 or 5 years old. And I like I say, I'm not a doctor or a psychiatrist, but it makes sense to me now that if I suddenly thought what was going on around me when I was 4 or 5 years old. I have an older brother who was having a very difficult time, and my parents didn't know how to handle it. It was, a lot of shouting and slamming doors and silences. That's what I grew up with. And so I see now that it was like, as the youngest child who nobody was talking to me in terms of, they weren't explaining anything to me. It was just, it was the 60s, like just go and play outside, go play somewhere else. That's kind of like how I was brought up. And so my little mind didn't know how to cope with that. And so there was a stress level, understandably. You're a little kid, you don't know what's going on, screaming and shouting and slamming doors, and brother missing. And at that time, that's when I started this chronic hay fever and chronic cystitis. So I'm a miserable child, which then means I can't join in, play dates, and I can't do swimming at school, and I get out of sports, and I'm then not joining in anything. This is just my guess, is that my brain then made an association between my immune system, which I learned from Deepak Chopra, that the immune system is a traveling nervous system, that it innocently made a misunderstanding that things like pollen or, whatever it was, that we could be, food in your case, is dangerous. And then the immune system starts thinking, doing its job, because immune systems are designed to keep us safe. And if that dangerous thing comes in, like a germ or bacteria, fight the germ. But innocently, it's fighting the gluten or the pollen in my case, and I remember when I was reading on my research, I read something from a dermatologist, and he said, my patients are weeping through their skin. And it broke my heart when I read that, because I saw that I was like weeping through my gut, and and also I got attention from my mother when I was sick. I don't know if that's really got much to do with it, but I know that's true. She had to take me to the doctor in the hospital, and to get all these tests done and stuff. And it's interesting when it goes away too. My cystitis went away when I was like 14, 15, when I, got interested in boys. It just suddenly went away. And then it came back again in my 30s. The asthma came when I was in college. The psoriasis came when I was in high school, because I had to do exams. In the 1970s, nobody was talking about stress in teenagers. I was terrified of exams, and my skin is all breaking out in horrible rashes. So I see now that there is a relationship between these things. So when you said that maybe that stuff started, when your son died, then innocently, our brains kind of, and our immune systems make an association with something that's actually quite harmless. And then every time we get into that situation, it kind of remembers that, because brains work on repetition and anticipation to protect us. And it's kind of what they call maladaptive. It's kind of adapted in the wrong way around. So as you start to, and I love what you were saying about, you could see you talk to yourself into it. And this is kind of what we're pointing at, that when you can see the role of thought and your thinking in all of this, that we're actually feeling our thinking. And it's not always like obvious conscious kind of thoughts. It can be, like I said, there's like this kind of mild river of, anxiety going on in the background. I might not even be aware, like I didn't even know I was anxious. But I see now that my kind of perfectionist personality, kind of was showing up as, I now see it was anxiety, the way I needed to have it, things to be the right way, and stressed about, what people thought of me and all that stuff. That my body was, my body talks to me, it talks to me through my back or my neck or my skin, my stomach. And now that I understand how my body talks to me, I don't have to overreact. Like I can still get a twinge of back pain or a twinge, of my allergies. And I know now it's telling me something, like, like your stomach was telling you something. So, and I don't even actually need to know what it is. I know I need to come back to the moment. Right? Because then to start analyzing it would be more stressful thinking, right? And that's where the vicious cycle goes round and round. So I think all I need to know is that I need to come back to the moment. And if I come back to the moment, then I have everything I need. I have everything I need in this moment. So thank you for that. I hope you're feeling better now. Yeah. So I know Katrina had a hand up, but I know Katrina, so I just want to go to somebody who's new to this. So Sheila, I don't know if we know each other. You have your hand up. Did you have a question? You there? Can you hear me? Sheila? Hi there. She ran away. Maybe she can't hear me. Let's see. I'm just gonna because some of the questions that a couple
Here,
of you, oh, you there?
Can you
Yeah.
hear me?
Yes, go ahead. Do you have a question?
Yeah. I'm sorry there's no picture. I tried to get my camera to work, so
Don't
I'm
worry.
kind of anonymous here. Okay, I just had an experience that's been an ongoing one, and you're making sense, but my blood pressure is always textbook perfect or lower at home.
Mhm.
When I go to a doctor, it can go up easily 100 points. And they're ready to have me, in a hospital or something. And I'm saying, no, this is just my subconscious. And I went to a doctor this morning and it was higher than ever. And I feel like I'm calm, but something's going on. I don't know how to change it. I don't know what I want to say, but I'm not actively thinking, oh my God, my pressure's going to be high, but it is.
Right.
So is it coming from my subconscious?
Well, first of all, I mean, like I say, I'm not a doctor, and I would always urge everybody to have a medical, professional medical person to check that out. So have the doctors given you any reason why your blood pressure is doing that?
No, they're as puzzled as I am.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, then if the doctors don't have an organic medical reason for it, then I would say it sounds like then it would be what we call a mind-body connection issue.
Oh, absolutely.
Right.
Yeah.
So you mentioned the word subconscious a few times. Would you be surprised to hear that I don't believe there's such a thing?
Okay, that's okay. I have read your books.
You have?
Yes, I have. I guess I
Okay.
haven't applied.
Right. So I just want to clarify that. Now, of course, we have a unconscious, right?
Right.
Because like, for example, like when I wake up in the morning and I make myself a cup of tea, I don't have to think, where is the hot water? You know, how do I get the milk out of the fridge? You know, I just know these things, right? There's so many things that are programmed into our minds that we don't consciously think about. Like when you learn to ride a bicycle, or when you learn to write your name, you know, there's so many things that we can do without consciously thinking about them. Thank God, because otherwise we'd never get through the day. You know, if you had to think about what muscles to tighten, to lift your legs out of bed, to put your slippers on, you know, I'd be exhausted by, you know, 9 o'clock in the morning. So I see the unconscious as kind of like a storage room. You know, the storage room is full of all this information that like filing cabinets that I can go and dig in if I need, you know, to remember that movie with that, you know, that girl was in, you know, like, remember, you know, like, it's like, you know, all those things about where your keys are and how to get to the bus stop, and you know, it's all kind of filed away in the storage room there. But the subconscious is more of a kind of psychiatry Freudian kind of term, and it usually implies that there's something going on a deep level that's a little bit unnerving, and it's maybe out to get me, and we've got to analyze it, but we don't know where it is. All right. And can you feel that kind of tension? There's kind of like a fear going on there. And personally, I can't subscribe to a belief system that's going to put me in fear in order to find the fear.
Right.
That's a whole bunch of fear, which I have plenty of, you know, like I didn't need any more. So
I do know my fear. I'm sorry, I interrupted
yeah, go ahead.
you.
What do you think it is?
I have been allergic to most medicines.
Right.
So when I go to a doctor and they're saying, well, here, take this, the fear is, oh my God, I'm going to be allergic to it.
Sure. But you see,
so,
to me, that makes perfect sense.
Right.
You know, if I've been bitten by a dog, then it would make sense that I'm going to be a bit cautious around dogs. That I put that down as wisdom. You know, if you know that touching a hot stove is going to burn you, right? Then
Right.
you know, file that away with, you know, hot things hurt, right? So if medicines have, you know, caused you, you know, physical discomfort before, it makes sense that you're nervous about going to the doctor. Okay, so what do we do now? So now you realize you have this story. It's actually a story you have that you're carrying around in your head, that, you know, doctors are dangerous. So I can imagine, just as you're, you know, even, you know, I always think of the dentist at this point, you know, like, I'm not that scared of the dentist, but I'm sure my blood pressure goes up a little bit just walking through the door. You know, that smell, that noise, you know, what's going on in that other room? I can hear, you know, the drill going on. You know, these are all normal human reactions. But when it kind of spills over into such anxiety that it's now making your blood pressure go up, that the doctors are concerned, we need to look and see why are we believing something that's actually making you worse, right? So
right.
I wouldn't suggest like analyzing it, like I said to Crystal, who I was just known to, like analyzing it is actually adding more stressful thinking in. What if you knew that there was actually nothing wrong with you?
That would be great.
Right? Well, I'm telling you, there's nothing wrong with you. And I'm just saying this because that's why I asked at the beginning if the doctors, you know, please get checked by a doctor. So, and that was one of the questions that was sent in to me, that this woman said, you know, I've had so many tests and the doctors say there's nothing wrong with me. And yet I'm really sick all the time and I'm exhausted. So I'm wondering if when you had those previous experiences, when you had the reactions to the medications, it'd be curious to know what stories you had going on then, right? So I was in a class recently with my teacher. I said, his name's Dr. Bill Pettit. He's a retired psychiatrist now, but he started out his medical career as a surgeon and an emergency room doctor. And I heard him say this amazing thing recently. He said that antibiotics, for example, only work as well as your state of mind. And I thought, what? how could that be? Like, as if antibiotics have an opinion or an agenda. Antibiotic is, it's a chemical, or salts or whatever. I don't know what they're made of, but they're just things. They're not, they don't have opinions. And so he explained to me that kind of what I was saying earlier about how the immune system, is a traveling nervous system. So if your mood is low, your body is going to react to the antibiotics or whatever medication, like, it's not going to process it as well as if your immune system's in a better place. And my immune system is compromised by stress. So he said, there's always that person who every winter has to, gets all the colds and gets all the flus and has to try like 3 or 4 different antibiotics before they find something that works for them. Well, why would that be? It's because their immune system is compromised and their body is working really hard to try and make use of the medications. And that's often why we have allergic reactions. And some allergic reactions are just biological. Like I'm actually allergic to penicillin. And I've been tested recently, and that's got nothing to do with my thinking. It's just some allergies are just weird like that. But if that's not the case, and and your body is not processing things, and like for other people on the call, they're not processing foods properly. For some people, it's shampoos and soaps. I've had clients who are allergic to perfumes and all kinds of things, like fabrics on their skin. What's happening is our bodies are screaming at us. They're screaming at us to slow down. And like you said that you felt pretty calm. But like I said earlier, I thought I was a calm, happy person until I started understanding exactly what stress and anxiety really are. And as I started to understand what they are, I started to see like, oh my goodness, I was living in anxiety all the time and I didn't know it because it had kind of become normal for me. Like there's people who live near an airport or a train station, and you visit them and they're like, the sound of the air, how can you sleep? The airplanes, they go like, what airplanes? They don't hear it anymore because they've gotten used to it. And I think that's kind of like us with stress and anxiety. If you have been living that way for a long time, you're probably not it's probably become normal, and you've gotten really, I know I got really good at handling it. I knew how to live with a mind that's constantly seeing as everything is wrong and negative, and it's probably not gonna. I hated happy people. They were stupid. That's kind of how I was, right? So that would be my suspicion. I don't. Is any of that helpful? Did any of that make sense?
It makes sense. I have been told for many, many years that I am a very allergic person. So, yes, doctors told me that constantly. So that's all there inside of me. And you're telling me I'm not broken. And there is hope. I just, oh no.
Yeah, I think, we often use the word innocent. It's an innocent misunderstanding. I would have done better if I knew better.
Right.
As soon as I started to understand this, how my mind works, how experience is created, that's when my pain and my allergies went away. That's when my stomach calmed down, my skin got better. Because, you see, there's a kindness in the design. One of my new favorite phrases. There's a kindness in the design of the way we're made. And the way our brains, our minds and our bodies are connected is really to help us survive. And I'll just finish with this. I was coaching a young boy recently, and he was having, the school wants to medicate him for ADHD. He's just a 12-year-old boy who can't sit still, in my opinion, right? And so his parents, who saw that too, they wanted me to help him and to see if we could get the school, to calm down. The school needs calming down, right? And so I was trying to explain to a 12-year-old, about how our bodies talk to us. So I said to him, in the middle of the day when you're at school and there's a break and it's lunchtime, what's going on in your stomach? He goes, well, my tummy rumbles. I said, yeah. Does that mean you're dying? He's like, no, no, it means that you're hungry, that you've got to eat a sandwich or pizza or whatever he's going to have, right? I said, when you're running around doing sports, what happens, you know, to your temperature? He says, well, I get hot, I get sweaty. I said, does that mean you're leaking? Right? And he said, no, right? You're not leaking, you're sweating. It's your body's trying to cool you down. And I went through a few of these things about, you know, like just normal, natural reactions the body has. And they're, all of it is trying to help us survive, to eat, to cool down, you know, to sleep. And I said to him, what's it like in the classroom when you shout out of turn or you start to push and, you know, kick the person in front of you? And he went like this. He said, I feel it here. I said, what do you feel there? He said, I feel tight here and I've got to jump, I've got to move to get rid of it. I was like, wow. So I was showing him that what if this feeling here is actually a signal to take a deep breath, to stop, you know? And, you know, he kind of got it, right? Like a rumbly tummy means eat, you know, sweat means you're too hot. This, and I've asked a lot of clients this, you know, where do you feel that tension? And sometimes it's people's chest. Like for me, it was always in the back of my skull, the muscles in my chest and my neck and shoulders. For other people, it's their stomach. You know, you feel that tension. That tension lets me know that my thinking is heading in the wrong direction. And that's kind of seems pretty obvious to me when you said that your blood pressure goes up when you go to the doctor's office. Like me and the dentist, you're thinking like, uh-oh, here we go. What's going to happen? You're feeling that thinking. And so your blood pressure is letting you know that your thinking is entering anxious territory, right?
Right.
That's all that's happening.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I need a session or two with you.
Oh, please. I mean, it'd be my honor. Please be in touch. Yeah, we can certainly work.
I certainly will.
Yeah,
Thank you.
yeah. Thank you, Sheila. So, so we're almost out of time. So Pamela, who runs the histamine group, she said to me, make sure you tell them about your books. So I've got them here. I've actually written 3 books. I don't have a copy of the first one handy, but the second one, it's called Painless. And this one is about chronic pain. My books are all novels. They're stories, because I found that, I don't know, but like, I'm weird. I love reading pain research, but I know not everybody does, right? So I put all the information I've learned over the years into stories. So the characters do the suffering and the falling down and the researching and searching and the getting better and the getting up and the feeling better. So there's always a happy ending, right? So this one is called Painless, and that's about chronic pain and chronic issues, physical issues. And then this one came out this year, and if you can see that, it's called Very Well. They're both on Amazon. This one, the subtitle is A Novel About Hormones, Women, and Why Freud Was Wrong, right? So this one is about a woman who's going through menopause, and she has 2 daughters. One has postpartum depression, and the other daughter has something called PMDD, which is a very severe monthly menstrual disorder. And so it's about how they discover the ideas that I've been sharing with you, and their symptoms go away, which my menopause symptoms went away. And I've had women read this book and their hormonal problems have gotten better. And I've had people read the Painless one, and their physical issues have gotten better because they had insights. Their thinking slowed down. It's amazing. It really is, you know, when you really see that there's nothing wrong, you're not broken. And it's just innocently we got caught up in some stories and some thinking, you know, your body can calm down and it will stop screaming at you. So thank you so much, everybody. I'm so impressed and glad that so many of you showed up. And if you have any more questions, you have my email, or you can find me on Facebook. And oh, sorry, it's just, I think that's mute somebody. So please reach out. Happy to answer your questions. We can have a free discovery call if coaching is something that you're looking for. We can have a chat about it and see if it's a good fit for you. I also have a membership group. Just want to tell you about this. I have a women's membership group. Some of the ladies here on the call are in this group, and we have group coaching every week. We have a book club. I record all these little thought for the day videos, and we've got a forum for questions and sharing, and it's a really wonderful supportive group. So please let me know if you want to know more about that. So thank you again for coming, and I wish you all the best, and be well, and I will speak to you soon. Okay, take care. Bye.